we are going to continue talking about statistics. When we talk about statistics, we are talking about how we are going to summarize numbers, a data set, so a group of numbers, into one number, okay? And there's different types of measures of doing that, okay? And one of the types of measure is called a measure of central tendency. That's when we take a group of numbers and we find one that's in the middle, okay? So oftentimes those are basic ones, okay? Another type of measure is when we measure variability, measures of variability. And we'll talk about what the difference is. A measure of variability tells us how spread out the data is, okay? And both help us see data, a group of numbers, and they inform us on how we can make better decisions, okay? So for example, if we know a measure of central tendency, a number that gives us something in the middle, and we know a measure of variability, we can use that information and that can tell us how confident we can be in our decisions we make based on the data. So if the measure of variability is small, then we can be more confident in the measure of central tendency that's in the middle. If the measure of variability is big, we can be less confident in the measures of central tendency. Okay, so let's try we'll talk about each one as we go. Okay, these are the main ones, or a few of these are the main ones of statistics. So we're gonna put up a data set, and I encourage you to do the same thing. So 10, 14, 8, 11, 10, 9, 8, 10, 9, 2, 7. Okay? So we have 10, 14, 8, 11, 10, 9, 8, 10, 9, 2, 7. Okay? The first thing that I always do, okay, if the data set is small enough, okay, the first thing that I do is I put all these numbers in order, from least to greatest. So the reason I do that is because it makes finding all of these measures that we're about to do a lot easier. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in order. Okay, so we have 7, and I cross them out as I go so I don't miss any. 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10, 10, there's 3 10s. 11, I missed one, there's a 2, and here's a 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have 11 data points. Okay, so we're going to find some measures of central tendency. Okay, the first measure of central tendency is something called mean. If you don't know what mean is, but you've heard of the word average, okay, that's what average is. That's another name for average. Mean is the average. Okay, how do we find average? We add all these numbers up and divide by how many numbers there are. Add all the numbers up and divide by how many numbers there are. So I'm going to take out a calculator and I'm going to add all these up. Now, my suggestion is that since you have a calculator, that you add up these numbers all together more than one time, just to make sure that you get the same answer. So I'm going to add these up. 2 plus 7 plus 8 plus 8 plus 9 plus 9 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 11 plus 14. I get 98. Okay, I get 98. And I'm going to divide by how many numbers there are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 numbers. So I'm going to divide by 11. Okay? I'm going to re-add these up just to double check that I got them right. that I get the same answer. I got the same answer. So now I take 98 and I divide by 11, and I get a decimal, 8.909, and it goes on. Okay, if you use your calculator, you'll see that. And I'm just gonna round to the hundredths, so this 9 tells that 0 to go up. So my mean equals 8.91. My mean, or my average, is 8.91. 8.91. Okay, so this is the first measure of central tendency, because if you were to put 8.91 on this, it would likely be close to the middle. Okay, and if you have good data, your mean should be close to the middle. Okay, now let's try the next measure of central tendency, which is median. Okay, median. Median means middle. It's when we're going to find the middle of the data set. Now, how do we do that? We cross off. First of all, you have to put all your numbers in order. So that's why I do this. I put them in order right away, because multiple times we need to know things that when the numbers are in order, it's a lot easier to find. So the first thing that you have to do is put your data set in order to find median. If you haven't done that, you'll have to. Okay? And then you just cross off the outside. So I'm going to cross off, and I'm going to put the X underneath until I get to the number that's in the middle. So my median is equal to 9. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on this side. My middle number is 9. So that is the median. Okay? The next measure of central tendency is called mode. The next measure of central tendency is called mode. Mode is the number that occurs most often. The number that occurs most often. So we can easily look through and find the numbers. This occurs twice, 8 occurs twice, 9 occurs twice, but 10 occurs 3 times. So 10 is our mode because it occurs more often than these two. Okay, so our mode in this data set is 10. The mode in this data set is 10. Okay? The last measure of central tendency that we have is something called mid-range. Okay, and this is one that Khan Academy uses. And this is just to give you a quick snapshot of where the middle might be. Okay, where the middle might be. So how do you find mid-range? You add the least number, which is 2. You add it to the biggest number, which is 14. And you divide by 2. Okay? It's like finding the mean or the average of the smallest and biggest numbers, the least and greatest numbers. So 2 plus 14 is 16, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. So our mid-range is 8. So we have our mean was 8.91, our median was 9, our mode was 10, and our mid-range was 8. Okay? These were all measures of central tendency, or MOC. Okay? Not MOC, the school a little ways away. Okay? Measures of central tendency. Okay? Now, one of the measures of variability, something that shows how spread out the data is something called range. So I'm going to erase these measures of central tendency. A measure of variability is range. Okay? And range is when you take the biggest number, which is 14, and you subtract it with the smallest number, 2. 14 minus 2 is 12. So our range, our measure of variability, this is MOV, okay, how spread out the data is 12. Okay, so the smaller this number is, the closer together your data set is, the more confident you can be in your prediction for what will happen in the future based on the data that you have. The more spread out, the bigger this number is, the less confident you can be in your prediction for what will happen in the future. So the bigger this number is, the less confident you can be. The smaller this number is, the more confident you can be. Okay, when you're making decisions about what will happen in the future based on the data that you have. Okay, so we went over mean, median, mode, range, and mid-range. If you have any questions, my suggestion would be to watch the video again and see how I go through this. If you have another question about this video in particular, please ask. But the next video you're going to watch is going to go through another example, and we'll talk about 2 important things that you will need to know for 2 of the things that we talked about. So make sure you watch that as well.